Okay, this is the critical lap. This is the critical lap. Confirm.
Leave me alone. I know what to do.
Welcome to the Critical Lap. Welcome back to the Critical Lap, your one-stop shop for all of you new F1 fans, maybe long-term F1 fans, but those that are eagerly joining the sport, excited to get into it. I'm one of your hosts, Ruben, relatively new to the Formula One scene. I will admit openly that Drive to Survive brought me in. But I latched on quickly and really got hooked. So, yeah. And Daniel.
Hey, everyone. I'm Daniel. I'm that long-term fan, pre-Drive to Survive at least. Ruben, Drive to Survive, bringing you into the sport, that's kind of like watching Keeping Up with the Kardashians on TV and then becoming a fan of whatever else they're doing now. I wouldn't compare it to Formula One.
Yeah. Yeah, I'm going to leave the hot take of what they're doing and just nod and smile. Yeah, Drive to Survive brought me in. It's easy to get hooked on it. I actually had somebody recommend another show like that. I think it was for like European football. It was like Premier League soccer or something like that. Football. English.
It's
fans.
funny that you mentioned the comparables in other sports. I wonder, isn't it Hard Knocks? It was like an HBO show, right? Where they would follow a different team.
Hard Knocks.
This is NFL, by the way. I wonder if Hard Knocks has brought anybody to the sport of professional American football from other countries.
I think we covered this a little bit after the Super Bowl. I think any blip in the trend line that Hard Knocks had just got washed away by Taylor Swift starting to date Travis Kelce.
Easily.
So, yeah. If there was an effect,
well,
it's
I just hope
now.
that if you came to the sport via Hard Knocks, that you're here to stay. Similar to like if you came to F1 via Drive to Survive, you're here to stay. If you come to F1 via Taylor Swift, or if you come to the NFL via Taylor Swift, I feel like you're probably not going to stick around much longer or much further past Taylor Swift's inevitable departure, because either she and what's his name, Travis? Either Taylor and Travis will part ways, or Travis will retire. Which best wishes, that's Travis, on both of those things.
Yeah, not this year.
No, you still
not this year.
Can't go out like that, buddy.
He needs the money. I thought you were going to say if you were brought to F1 by Gunther Steiner as part of Drive to Survive, then if you stuck around,
so Gunther Steiner is the Taylor Swift of the new Formula One audience, or the growing Formula One audience.
I don't think anyone would disagree with that. Gunther Steiner is the Taylor Swift.
All right, guys, you heard it here first.
Yes.
Gunther Steiner, as important, as famous, as necessary to our what do we call ourselves? What do we call the Formula One audience? What are we collectively?
One. I mean, we're the critical lappers.
Okay, so
y'all
Gunther
are the critical
Steiner
lappers.
is
if you're hearing this right now,
to the critical lappers as Taylor Swift,
the critical lappers
to anything.
Yeah, I mean, it wasn't. We're not the ones who started this. Drive to Survive. Netflix made it very clear they panned to Gunther anytime anything happened in the first three seasons.
He was the Jim Halpert of Drive to Survive. In addition to being a critical part of the storyline on most accounts, he also had some great reactions.
Yeah. I will say I pride myself on my imitations of accents, not in front of people, just when I'm in the kitchen making a snack and I'm practicing. I cannot imitate Gunther Steiner. I can't do it. I can say certain words, not here because this is a family show, but I can say certain words, but I can't imitate his whole pattern.
Yeah.
Well, it's an exciting time. Gunther Steiner covered. I see him around a lot more now, even though he's left the Haas team. It seems like he's making his way through the media a lot more, and then doing the interviews, which he's okay.
Well, isn't Gunther part of the stake, soon to be Saudi stake? What's the Saudi? Sorry, Sauber. What's the Sauber team name currently? Soon to be Audi. Steak Sauber? What's the other sponsor? Kick Sauber. Isn't he part of Kick Sauber now? Soon to be Audi.
I did not see that. Is he?
I'll
let you look that up. That seems like something he would do. I know he does a lot of interviews. I know he's been doing the post-race interviews.
Sorry, I know it looks like I just opened the fridge. Apologies. It's just Wikipedia, guys. I'm not eating.
Just own it. If you're getting a drink, if you're getting a little snack, just own it. Well, while you look that up, excited to cover some of the big preseason takeaways. We just finished preseason testing in Bahrain.
Indeed.
Excited to get into that. It's looking like a pretty tight year. At least that's what all the hype has been. What were your big takeaways from preseason testing?
I don't think I was surprised by very much, to be honest. McLaren seems like they're going to be the pace setters. Maybe one surprise, if we're going to go top down, one surprise was Red Bull. Red Bull seemed to not really have it together until the very end. I still think top four contenders this year are your usual suspects: McLaren, Ferrari, Mercedes, Red Bull. I don't know. I think that, Red Bull is being forced to steal a little bit of budget and bandwidth and horsepower from the 2026 development to try to remain competitive this year. Yeah. We've talked a lot about what does Max do, right? What happens? Is he happy with the team? Is he happy with the car? And if there's a continual degradation there, what does he do with the future of his career?
Right. A lot more buzz around that this week.
Right.
I feel like a lot more buzz around, again, you heard it here first. It was a couple weeks ago we asked, is Verstappen going to be leaving after the season? And I think after that preseason test, there was a little more buzz around that. Is it going to be enticing for him to leave? Does
Red Bull call it now and say, you know what, 2026 is key. We'll survive with or without him? Or are they trying to put their best foot forward to try to continue or extend a streak of dominance? So that was top down.
I was surprised.
Starting with those four, that was kind of my surprise.
Yeah, I did notice some of the analyst conversations around the cars in between sessions talking about what you just said, that a lot of these teams are preparing for 2026. So big regulation changes happening in 2026. I think the first time that they're changing the chassis and the engine regulations in the same season, and they'll be under those rules for a few years, several years. What is this, year 4? 2022, 3, 4, and 5 on the current regulations, and Red Bull's been pretty dominant. But there was a lot of conversation around, are these teams going to bring anything really new? Or are they just going to hold and kind of get by until 2026?
There's talk about how the Ferrari car is 99% different from the 2024 car. So
right,
that doesn't necessarily mean it's 90. All those changes are new and better. It could just be,
right,
different. Period. Full stop. Right. So we don't really know. I like to think that every year counts and every team wants to be competitive every year, but I don't know. I think there's definitely a potential for missteps if you think about Mercedes, right? Mercedes didn't quite come out strong year one of the most recent regulations or the current regulations, and they seem to have struggled to get back to where they would like to be or where they had been before the whole time. So
yeah. So you're talking 2022, Mercedes came out with this so-called zero side pod design, and stuck with it longer than I think people thought they would.
Yeah.
And yeah, which I kind of love. Granted, I don't have to deal with the loss of prize money from falling to, I think it was 3rd place in the first year and all the way down to 4th last year, ultimately. But they did come out with some pretty big changes. I think it was Ferrari that said they had made a lot of changes, pretty noticeable changes. But Christian Horner said that every surface of the Red Bull car had been changed. I mean, he was claiming there were a lot of changes and a lot of adjustments to the Red Bull car. I mean, what's your take on that? Do you like every surface has been changed? Like we sanded a little bit and painted it, and there's a slight
The
curve
sponsors
variation.
are not the same.
Yeah, we lost a few.
Yeah, so I think that there's like macro and micro to this, right? So like macro, this is the side pod type that we're going to have. Within that, the surfaces can be changed entirely while not altering sort of the thesis or the approach to the overall aerodynamic,
right?
Front to back flow of the car, right? There's all kind of things you can do with heat dispersion. Do you grab more cool air and redirect it into over the brakes into the air? How do you get the air into the engine, right? How do you get air over the cooling mechanisms of the engine, the radiators? All kind of things that you could say like, yeah, we're changing all this, but like a small tweak is a change, just like a complete change in thesis or change in theory of how you make the car stick to the ground better.
Right. Well, I mean, in relatively minor changes, this is one thing I've had to really adjust to. At first glance, these cars look exactly the same, and then they'll come out halfway through the season, having not performed well, suddenly take a huge leap. And you can watch, one of the tech talks or something like that, or a YouTube video, and they'll say, "Oh, here's the 3 changes they made," and they have to zoom in on a brake duct cooling or brake cooling duct, whatever. And that's the big change. That makes a huge change in the way the air moves over the car. There used to be
2 blades in this duct. Now there's 3, and that has some effect of the way the air redirects or the turbulence throughout the duct. And I mean, so guys,
but it seems like it does make a significant difference a lot of times.
Of course.
It is those minor things that change the way the car handles.
I wish I was technical enough to explain things a little bit better. I think for the sake of our audience, which welcome back everyone if you've listened before, and thanks for joining if this is the first one. But I don't know. I think I would just ruin everyone's day if I got into it because I can't. I don't have I like it. I like that technical aspect. I don't think I could explain it.
Yeah. Well, that's all right. I will say the one car that we can be fairly sure has a lot of new body panels is the Haas because they're falling off.
All right. So we
whatever they
Let's
changed.
go straight to the bottom.
Straight to
Which
the
honestly,
bottom.
I think the Kick Sauber car performed worst, right? Am I remembering the stats correctly? I think the bottom.
They were closer than I want them to be. I know day one, both Haas's were at the rock bottom.
Well,
and then they were kind of mixed up throughout. I think Ocon jumped up to maybe 10th or 9th.
If you look at the number of laps Haas ran, though, they ran a high volume of laps compared to most teams. They were kind of in that top tranche of distance. So I think Haas maybe. I wish they were trying to perform a little bit more, but maybe their focus was just on, hey, let's really shake the car down. Let's make sure it can, whatever we've got going, can handle everything we're doing. Obviously, it started breaking apart on the surface. I saw somewhere that it might be a fastener issue. Maybe they were trying to save weight and use fewer fasteners or smaller, weaker, lighter fasteners. You had mentioned something about fiberglass lamination, though, could have been the issue.
Yeah, I just saw one of the Tech Talk breaks down. Is it Sam Collins? Is that his name in the F1 TV that does some of those? He just described what they're made of. It's effectively, carbon fiber and fiberglass type layered approach. And so if it starts breaking down, it can peel apart, really quickly if it delaminates.
So it could be in the construction process, like they didn't put enough Elmer's glue in between the layers of carbon fabric or woven carbon or whatever it is in the glass.
Yeah. I mean, he basically called out that the thinner you can get that, the lighter the car is, the less you have to put in the skin of the car. But if you go too thin at some point, it,
bad news bears.
Compromised. Yeah. Although it does make me laugh because in my vehicle, the gear shift knob at one point just stopped working. And it turns out it was a small, cheap $2 plastic part that holds the shift cable on. cheapest thing to fix. And the whole time I thought, what idiot told the engineer? Like the engineer said this should be stainless steel, and somebody was like, no, we can save 8 cents a car if we go with plastic, and they did, and it found me under my dashboard, replacing pieces. So some engineer I think suggested to Haas we can save a little money if we just go with a nice lightweight, composite.
Toyota will be happy with us if we don't spend all their money.
Right. Put it all into the engine. I did love seeing the pieces. I don't know if you've ever seen, you've been watching longer than me. I haven't seen a lot of the side body work be peeled back like that I guess that in that area, because typically it'll be the side pod that gets destroyed if somebody hits them really hard or something like that. But it was peeled back away from the top air intake. And then it wasn't, the car wasn't damaged. Somebody hadn't smashed into it. So it was really nice seeing the undamaged
so the car was,
underside of that.
For all intents and purposes, like undressing itself. I would say that's if you're a competitive team, if you're at the top of the grid, if you're at the top of the grid, that's like, danger zone, right? Like you don't want people seeing what's going on under the hood, especially as you make changes. It is cool to see. It's funny to think. I always have a problem with like scaling the car, right? Like you see a helmet. That's the only, like, as the car is driving around, like, it's the only real like reference point you have. Like, how big is this helmet to see kind of how big like an average human being would be, and then like to, then like think of the car around that human being. When you walk up to a Formula One car in real life, like it barely gets like waist high. Like it's like you can, it's this thing that's just like someone dropped something on the ground and it's not stood upright, So it's when I see in the hood, I think about like, those engines are really big for how much displacement they have, which is very little. But even then, they're inside of this pretty small car to begin with.
Yeah. Well, and that surprised me too, because very unimaginatively, I assumed you look at those cars and they look very sculpted. They look very muscular, right? So the way the body work goes, it puts you in mind of a very muscular, animal or something. And if that body work gets peeled back, I just assumed it would be packed, jam full of all these electronics. And it's not. There's a lot of airflow going under the body work that I frankly wasn't aware of. How much air they funnel, not just over the top, but through various vents and slats, run it under that bodywork and back out the back end, and how much that contributes to aerodynamics, not even for cooling, just for processing air. So I really love seeing that. I felt I was sad that it was at the expense of Haas, but
Go America. Yeah, we've harped a lot on American pride with Formula One and how we hope Cadillac, brings forth that American can-do attitude and ingenuity and all that kind of stuff. And first chance Haas gets, they just show how quality really isn't that front of mind anymore.
Right. Well, I guess the big fear is Haas uses a lot of Ferrari parts, right? I mean, they're moving to more Toyota than Ferrari, but how much of Ferrari's underwork did they just reveal?
Yeah, good question. Their car? Or how much of last year's Ferrari underwork did they reveal?
Right.
So,
Lewis Hamilton's test car that he drove.
So before we get too far down the list of teams, on the top four, like what's your takeaway? What do you think about sort of the performance between them and what that might predict for this season?
So I felt like my big takeaway for preseason testing in general was that the gaps seemed to be even smaller. So if you think about last year, I actually went back and looked at the preseason testing times, and I know they vary, and there's a statistical analysis that I'm sure could get us better detail. But the quick review was day one, they had the smallest gap was 4.5 seconds from the leader to the last runner. That was down to 2.8 this year. And the largest gap was 5 seconds, basically 5.1 seconds. Whereas back last year, the largest gap was like 8 seconds. So my big takeaway was, man, we are we're driving that gap down even further. And that's just exciting overall. If you think about the fact that last year we had 7 winners, four teams, 7 winners across 4 teams. And then realistically 3-4 teams kind of duking it out for the top 3 spots in the Constructors Championship. So if the gap times are any indication, my big takeaway was McLaren in the lead, probably coin toss maybe between Ferrari and Mercedes, and then maybe just Red Bull sliding further back. Like you said, I don't know that they can keep up. We'll find out in the constructors unless Liam really steps up. It's just going to be the Max Verstappen.
You heard it here first, folks. Red Bull could be the underdog of 2025.
Did we just give them the energy they need to take over?
Speaking of Red Bull and last year's testing, at testing last year, Red Bull had won 31 of the previous 33 races. Right. So to your point about there being kind of like a sense of dominance and expectation of dominance, and that there's an 8-second gap. And even if, one thing to keep in mind here is that each testing day only had 10 cars on track. Only, half of the team's drivers tested each day. So, let's just say that maybe if you might have the stat in front of you, but if you put all 20 cars together and try to kind of normalize or equalize across different tire compounds and that kind of thing, you might say that like 5 seconds is 6 seconds, but pack 20 drivers into that where you get a little bit more fudge room and pack 20 drivers into that is a very, very tight spread.
Yeah. That's what I'm hoping comes out of this. But I mean, back to your original question. Yeah, I think McLaren looks strong. It's difficult to tell because Lando Norris, I think, has been coached to hold his emotions back. And so when they interview him, he tries not to smile too much. Piastri, you can't make him smile if you wanted to. So he's a closed book. And I think between the two of them, you can't get a whole lot, but they look really strong. And like I said, I'm not sure Ferrari versus Mercedes.
Yeah.
I think the biggest benefit is Ferrari has 2 really experienced drivers.
I mean, George Russell had the fastest lap time third day. But I would say Mercedes and Ferrari are just very neck and neck. I would say that might be the fun one to watch this year, right? McLaren may have just enough of an edge with both great drivers that they have. If papaya rules can work for them or whatever, they might very well have.
What are those again?
I hear papaya is good for digestion. So like after you have like a really like a gut wrenching outcome of a race, you eat some papaya. Yeah. That's papaya rules.
Go 50 buffalo wings while watching a gut wrenching race. Papaya rules.
So I think that neck and neck aspect, at least from the indications we see in testing between Ferrari and Mercedes, maybe that's going to be the fun one to watch this year, especially since Hamilton's going to have a little bit of I don't want to say he's got an axe to grind, but he's got something to prove since he left one team for the other.
Right. I mean, he struggled against Russell last year. I think his race pace was better than qualifying, but there was no debate that Russell felt like he had the upper hand a lot of the time. Hamilton will want to take that back. He also will not want to be beat by his replacement.
Imagine that. His replacement, what do they call him? The Verstappen 2.0. Isn't that Antonelli's? Yeah.
Is this going to be Antonelli?
Or am I thinking of Ollie Behrman? I don't think it's Ollie Behrman. I think it's Antonelli. I
don't know. I didn't hear that. I knew he was really young when he came in, and Verstappen was quite young as well.
So, all right. So that's I agree with you on that takeaway. Especially with the top 4. Shall we move on to the middle of the field?
I don't know. I feel like we've excluded a team that might be fighting for that top 4 because you said George Russell had the fastest time of day 3. But who had the fastest time overall?
That's probably my favorite takeaway. And why I was even saying, I hate to categorize them midfield when they do seem to have some potential. But if you look at the day 3 times, third highest or third fastest, Albon, right? And that's not because he and Sainz were competing same day. He was the only Williams on the track that day. But overall, across the 3 days, the fastest lap
number one
time is held by
the
Mr.
one and
Carlos Sainz. Smooth operator. Smooth.
It was Carlos Sainz, and I think we were all so happy
Again,
to see
my
that.
favorite takeaway of the whole thing. I don't want to miscategorize Williams as a mid-tier team. I would love for them to be in contention. I would love for them to be fighting a Mercedes car, fighting a Ferrari, fighting anybody there. I mean, maybe it's Ferrari, Mercedes this year, and then it's Red Bull, Williams. I mean, can you imagine like Williams was at the absolute bottom of the grid at some point in the last dominant streak from Red Bull? For there to be such a drastic change if Red Bull and Williams are kind of like fighting for the position in the constructors, that would just be a really interesting outcome.
For sure. I mean, Carlos Sainz can pass 3 or 4 drivers on the track this year, and it's a big story. If he passes Hamilton at any point, if he passes Leclerc, it's going to be big. And honestly, you say not, misclassifying Williams as a mid-tier team. I've only known them as a bottom of the barrel team, right? They've only been down in 9th, 10th place as long as I've been watching. They were 9th last season, and it wasn't really a close 9th. And keep in mind, Haas, Alpine, and the V-Car team were neck and neck the whole time, and Alpine took a big jump there in Brazil. But Williams did not perform well. If they waited to 6th or 5th this year, that would be shocking.
I would love
compared to last year.
I would love it.
Yeah. All right. Well, Carlos Sainz, the smooth operator, he does great. I was shocked he didn't sing. There was much made of that he didn't sing at the F1 75. If that event wasn't for him to sing smooth operator, I don't know what it was for.
A reunion of sorts. Leclerc on the keys, Sainz on the mic. I don't know if they're singing smooth operator or not, but I mean, I think that'd be a great combo.
Yeah. For sure. There's so many good duets. I don't know if Leclerc sings, but oh man, that should be on F1 76.
Please, if anyone is listening to us, if any of you 8 to 12 people are somehow involved in the programming or the development of next year's reveal party.
Yes. Send your emails, send your votes, literally tens of emails. That would be great. I did see interviews with the principals. I don't know if you watched any of the little press interviews they did with the drivers or the team principals. There was one with Christian Horner and Zach Brown, and they asked them both about F1 75.
I didn't see this.
A little bit of... Oh, okay. So they asked them both. Zach Brown, not too surprising. I mean, he kind of called out. It was great to get a lot of cheers. We won. So that was exciting. A little bit of a dig at Christian right next to him. But honestly, Christian had the same response we had. When we started talking about this and said, was it a big deal? And they were booing. I think our response was, no, like Max Verstappen will not be bothered by some boos. And that was kind of what Christian Horner said, was like that he felt like the F1's reaction, the FIA's reaction was more toward crackdown of online bullying than it was trying to keep fans from being fans. But if I was Christian Horner's PR team, that's what I would tell them to say as well.
The FIA doesn't know what they're talking about, so why don't you make it seem like you can be their friend, hold their hand a little bit, and say, "Hey guys, why don't we focus on things that are actually important?" And if you're going to chastise somebody for something, why not? Let's try to get some awareness around online bullying. Okay, that is a great PR move. I would agree with that. Yeah,
I think that was a smart PR move. I think it was smart as well when his PR team told him, "Hey, nobody really wants to hear you whine about people booing you." Right? If just take it and move on. It was actually more poignant when they interviewed the drivers and they asked Verstappen the same question, but they started it by saying, "Oh, like the booze and the FIA has come out, and even your dad has said that was inappropriate." It's like, don't ask a 20-something-year-old.
Right,
Hey, your
right.
daddy said that people really shouldn't be booing you. Yeah. So this is fun interviews. F175, generally, it seemed like the reactions that they got from everyone they asked was, yeah, that was interesting. It was different. Seemed like it was, I think a couple drivers commented that they would have liked more cars and interviews with the drivers, that the fans kind of came out and then it was 7 minutes of the drivers on stage in the car and then on to the next one. So,
well, and I think that's something that you get doing it the old way, right? If each team has their own 90-minute event or however long reveal events are, if, not everybody wants to see every single car. I mean, unless it's your job to somehow compare them technically or whatever. So I think each fan then gets to kind of choose like which event they attend or which set of events they attend and in what order, not in what order, but like in whatever order they come out, and they can really do that deep dive. So maybe, I would say, especially for people who live in the UK who have easier access to these launches, that was probably a little bit of like a reduction in quality or reduction in experience there.
I think so. And I think it was Zach Brown who commented that he's a fan of fan events and that they should do more of those around the world. And that actually, I hadn't thought of that. I agree with that. I would love to see them do an event in America, to be honest, that's more geared toward relatively new fans. Maybe a lot more background on the teams, information about why is Ferrari this big deal, what's their history in Formula One. That would be really interesting. Whereas in England, maybe there's a totally different approach or a totally different review of the cars that could be more valuable for the fans there.
No, I like that.
I don't know, what's your take on
like
that?
A traveling museum kind of thing, like I don't know, strip mall in Chicago, old Lowe's or something, just fill it full of old cars and posters and just like information. I would pay $10 or $15 to walk through that on a Saturday, just see some things. And I mean, maybe it's a huge undertaking, I don't know, but I mean, let's just at least some of the teams could try it, right? Like at least some of the teams with a little bit of history. I don't think Haas really has much to show for it, unless you really want to know, like, what tickled Gene.
Kane Brown.
I mean, Kane Brown told a really great narrative there, but unless you really want to know what tickled Gene Haas's fancy enough to like spend the money on the team and all that. I mean, if McLaren, Williams, Ferrari, even Mercedes, even Red Bull had a little bit of that, let's do some education, I'd go see it if it was close to me. And I mean,
Or demonstrations. I know they do some donuts in the streets occasionally.
You do see a lot of that from Red Bull, where like before the Vegas event, they're going to be in Vegas with some hyping up. They'll bring a crowd out, and, make some noise. But no, I think that a little bit more of a longer standing event where you could kind of go at your leisure. For some reason, I don't know if you've seen the Van Gogh Museum or the Van Gogh Experience. I think it's in my area for a limited time, but I took one of my kids to see it. That's where I got kind of like the strip mall kind of thing, right? Like they just took some empty space in the strip mall, set it up as like a multimedia interactive experience. You walk through it; it takes 45 minutes, and it's kind of interesting, right? At least it's a way to kill some time.
Yeah.
So something like that, I think it would be really interesting. I think it'd be cool.
Yeah, I mean, it reminds me of the Miami Grand Prix where they put the paddock in the stadium. I forget the name of the stadium. It seems like
it's the Hard Rock Stadium,
the Miami Dolphins Stadium.
Okay.
Yeah. Hard Rock. It's probably got a name in there somewhere, but Hard Rock Stadium in Miami. We'll put a correction on the screen if you're watching this and we got that wrong. But they put the paddock in the stadium and sold tickets to sit in the stands, which is just an all call to the Formula One Drive to Survive fans who want to come and watch people walk around, hoping they'll catch some awkward interaction from the nosebleed seats, I guess. I don't know. But it reminds me of that, you probably could do some events like that where you let kids go sit in a old cockpit from, 5 years ago and have an inexpensive wind tunnel with smoke that kind of shows the way the air moves around the car. Like, find ways to build some hype around something that's relatively unusual here. And that might not be as popular if you went to some country in Europe that's been watching it forever and would value meeting the drivers more. I don't know. But anyway, we keep coming back to it because it seems like it garnered a lot of reactions, but I thought it was interesting. I just don't want to watch the exact same thing next year.
I'm with you there.
F175 again. So speaking of fan service, though, Daniel, they recently F1 published the results of the driver helmet design poll.
I've not seen
the results
no.
of this. Well, good. I have the results in front of me. You've got the design of the helmets. I think I sent those over to you. So if you'll pull those up, take a look at those. They asked for the voting, and I've got the top five helmet designs of 2025. Can you guess number one? Well, what's your number one?
So my number one for what I'm looking at from, the kind of the first shot or first chance at this year's helmets, which I as you know, you may not know, they used to not be able to change the design. They had the same design all year. I don't know what year they allowed them to start doing new ones. But the one that stands out to me, and I know I've gotten a lot of flack on and offline from liking the Ferrari livery so much from the reveal. Hey, I'm doubling down here. I think that yellow helmet that Hamilton's carrying on his head, sitting in the car, in that red and white and blue car, is just it. I love it. I mean, my favorite.
It needed some yellow. The car needed some yellow. I'll give you that.
That shell, petroleum logo. I like that contrast with the red. We talked about the Egypt, now E&I or Annie or whatever. We talked about that old like yellow and red and a little bit of white.
The 7 leg.
Is that how many legs? I thought it was. Yeah, it's a lot of legs.
I lost count. I tried to count, and it's like an optical illusion.
So
yours is Hamilton.
Mine is Hamilton. And no one take this as him being my favorite driver. I know I talk a lot about him. He's a great driver, etc. Not really my favorite driver, but I like that yellow helmet in that red car.
I think you're a better fan than me because you like the Ferrari, and I didn't care for it. I will say, after I watched preseason testing, I did think it still was terrible as it drove around with its weird white bumper coming right at you. Just giant blue and white bumper. But the number one, Hamilton.
Is that
Ferrari,
right?
19% of the votes. Yep.
I hate to be one of many here. I hate to be going with the flow, but I mean, I think it's a solid opinion.
That's okay.
It is obviously my own.
So you genuinely like the design, yeah?
I can't say that I would. I mean, I think the design is a little bit lacking. I just think that the yellow in the red car, that is what.
No, that's okay. What I was asking was, you're not a fan of it because of like the backstory of the helmet. No.
Is there a backstory?
Oh, okay. The bandwagoneer, the new fan, has information on a backstory. Okay.
Let's have it.
I'm going to have some hearsay here, and y'all feel free to Google it and put comments and tell me how I'm wrong. Here's what I found. Everybody said, "Wow, he picked a yellow helmet." It's an homage to Ayrton Senna, who had a yellow helmet with black stripes, or something like that. Or Hamilton used to wear a yellow helmet as an homage to one of his idols that he loved, Ayrton
Are
Senna.
you saying he used to like karting days? I'm thinking like an image just popped in my head of like Hamilton karting days, yellow helmet. Okay.
Yes.
Sweet,
way back in the karting days, yellow helmet. I think they've resurfaced some photos of Hamilton recently with the yellow helmet. I think, you can fact check me on this. I think Hamilton might have posted another LinkedIn post with it. So he's had a yellow helmet in the past, and the rumor was he had that because he liked Ayrton Senna. However, I found an interview with Hamilton, I think he gave a week or two ago, where he said he had a red helmet, but his dad couldn't see him as well on the other side of the track, so he got a yellow one. And I thought, if that's the case, I mean, I actually like that story better, that you just got it so that you just like basically highlighted yourself in a high visibility helmet for your dad, which to me is a better story than Ayrton Senna had the same color. But
that's
anyway,
a cool backstory.
Hamilton.
So when I think of the old school Ayrton Senna helmet, I think yellow and green because I think he was paying homage to the Brazilian flag. But I love that. I love that piece of it, that it's part Ayrton Senna, part like, his actual roots. Because I mean, if you think about this, if he started out in a red helmet, probably a Ferrari thing, like little karting driver, young kid, Ferrari's the coolest team, right? But then his dad's like, I don't know which one you are, buddy. I got to be able to see you.
Right. Well, that's what I thought. I thought that story was actually good. But going back to your vote, that's why I was surprised, because I'll be honest, when I saw this, I thought this is the same thing with the best driver pairing where everybody named Hamilton Leclerc. But of course they're going to name Hamilton Leclerc because it's Hamilton at Ferrari. And I thought, there's no way. No offense. And now I feel bad because you like the design. I thought you were picking it because of the history and the background, just like everyone else who voted for this. So I might have sent out a relatively informal text message-based poll to 34 of my friends. So several friends and family members, both reserve drivers, aka my kids. And Daniel, would you like to know the results of what I got from that poll?
These are the hard-hitting statistics that we're bringing to you. This is an all-American audience, right?
That's right.
Mm-hmm.
Critical Lap research team.
Some of them, are they all brand new fans to the sport? Are they all fans to the sport or fans of the sport? What's the demographic here? Break it down.
Do you know, I'm glad you asked. I actually did a little bit of tracking on this. I created a scale of 1 to 5, 5 being rabid fan, or like dyed in the wool fan. So that's you. Okay. You're a 5. I'm a 4. I kind of felt like that was a pat on the back for myself. I really like it. I'm really into it, but I haven't been here that long. So I can't say I have like the deep loyalties, all the way down to 1. And then I gave a lot of people 0s because they literally weren't even sure what I was showing them. Like I showed them the helmets and they were like, oh, I really like this like Piastri guy. And it was like, oh, okay, you guys don't know what you're talking about. I would say most of the people I sent it to were a 1 or a 0. They had like heard of it, seen a race, or not at all.
Well, and I even like that because there's way less bias, right? There's way less bias in that opinion, which to me gives more of like a true, this is appealing to just the human eye versus this is what a normal Formula One fan likes.
Yes, this was my reaction to, are these votes based off of the best helmet design, or are they just based off of the fan base? So if knowing that, you picked your favorite.
Let me take a guess.
Do you want to know? Let me take
a
number
guess
1.
At number 1.
Okay.
Yeah.
Based on
knowing
the designs. We'll put the designs up for everybody.
And knowing the demographic that you just laid out there. Oh, this is hard, man. This is hard.
I I'll tell you what. Here's what I did. I'll
Yep.
give you the methodology. I sent it to them and said, pick your top 3. You don't have to tell me your number 1. Just tell me the top 3. Because a lot of them were having a hard time choosing. So pick your top 3.
Okay, so I think they're going to have Norris, Lawson. I mean, I'll tell you what, the first one that my eye is drawn to when I open this image is Tsunoda. So those are my top 3. Just knowing that like they don't know who any of these drivers are. Norris, Lawson, Tsunoda.
Okay. You got one correct of the top 3. And there was a tie for second place. So technically, third place was Esteban Ocon. That black and red, sharp looking helmet. Now it was a distant third. And keep in mind there's a tie for second. The tie for second was Norris and Hulkenberg.
Okay.
Norris and Hulkenberg tied for second with more than twice the number of votes of Ocon. Yeah. The only reason why Hulkenberg didn't win this whole thing was people had a problem with the weird stars. They wanted it to be digital, like camo, which I have to agree with that. The number 1, drum roll please. This is research from the Critical Lap research team. That's me. And texting all my friends and family. The number 1 voted helmet from the non-F1 fans, just on
future
design,
F1 fans,
was Lance Stroll.
Whoa.
Lance Stroll's helmet was voted the most popular. It barely, by 1 vote, beat both Hulkenberg and Norris.
Whoa.
And I was, okay, I'm going to admit something. Even I was biased against Lance Stroll's helmet. I saw, like, people kept voting for it, and I was like, nah.
You're like, why am I even doing this?
Pretty sharp looking. Why am I even doing this? Why am I even asking you people? I literally had one friend send me, I think it was Ocon, George Russell, and Stroll as the green, red, and blue Power Rangers. And I was like, all right, that's fair. I did ask non-fans. So, hey, take that with a grain of salt. Maybe that's not the most official poll. But I guess my question there was just, if you ask people what the best design is without knowledge of who's who, will they pick any of these? Verstappen's was like bottom of the list. I think it got maybe 1 vote.
Verstappen's
Hamilton
easy.
came in with a solid 5 votes. But
not easy, sorry. Verstappen's has a little bit of a BMW motorsport, M Sport type with like the angular, red and blue. That kind of, and if you zoom out on the greater image and you see it among the rest of the helmets, that little logo right there on his chin or on the chin of the helmet kind of strikes a little bit of like a BMW logo, which I would love to see BMW back in the pinnacle of motorsport.
It kind of struck me as almost like an old like board game. That sounds like a weird thing to say, or like a flag of Maryland type busy patterns and angular designs. But it was surprising the results as they came back through. There were easy leaders. Hulkenberg, Stroll, and Norris, far and away, twice more popular than any of the other helmets. Unfortunately, I think all of the rookies suffered. They didn't get any votes for the rookies except for Doohan. Doohan's helmet was popular. I think it had a little bit of an Evel Knievel look to it. So anyway. All right. Well, I don't know if that was worth anything, but
look, I do like the Aston Martin racing green, so Stroll leaned into it. But to me, the helmet's kind of the cool thing that like doesn't have to match anything about the car, and I like to see it kind of stand out, especially when it's the only way you know the difference between one car from the team and the other.
I was going to say it's a cool looking helmet, but it's going to blend in with that car. It is handy. Like last season, when Hamilton would come around, you knew it was Hamilton or Russell if it was blue or that high visibility yellow. So I tend to agree with you. I think my number one, by the way, was Science. I really like Sciences with that blue and the a little bit of the
little Spanish flag
elements. Yep. I liked Science and was a big fan. I still like Norris. I think his is really sharp. I can't get there with Hamilton, but then again, it seems like you and I are destined to differ on the Ferrari design this season.
Sorry.
That's all right. That's okay. Well, there you go. The first official Critical Lap poll. We'll put the next one out for everybody else. Let's do some quick reactions. Daniel, I don't know if you have any for me today, but all right. I'll let you go first.
So did you know? Well, not did you know? How let's that's more of like a corroborating detail. Did you know the definition of garden leave or gardening leave as it pertains to Adrian Newey before Adrian Newey left Red Bull?
No. I know what you're going to say. No, I don't. I saw that term come up and had to Google it and figure out what they were talking about. So maybe walk us through this. What is
garden leave? I guess is a British slang or term for what we would consider like a non-compete clause or like a non-complete workout. I thought it was just like a term. I mean, it's kind of self-explanatory if you don't go too far into detail. Like, oh yeah, he's just gonna sit at home and mow the grass or whatever, piddle. Obviously, Adrian Newey was known to have said like, I think I'd like to hit the water on my new boat kind of thing. But apparently, the reason this is a quick reaction today is I didn't realize that Adrian Newey didn't officially start at Aston Martin until this month. I think it was the 3rd of March.
March
maybe March 1st, maybe March,
yeah.
Whatever day it was. I thought Adrian Newey was already kind of hard at work behind the scenes and already getting in there, but like there was all this hype about him actually starting his first day. There was a picture online of his new offices, which look really cool, by the way. But it's the picture has the office has like one big glass wall. You can see the whole thing, and then on one side of it, there's like an actual drawing board set up, like a drafting table, if you will, which I thought was really cool. But
sorry, just looking up pictures while you tell me this.
But yeah, so garden leave or gardening leave is actually a term that refers to the lockup period after you leave a company because of a non-compete, right? Which we see non-compete as like a kind of a bad thing. It's bad for the employee, bad for the market, bad for labor pool, whatever, talent pool. But it sounds like it's more of like if you could negotiate a buyout into an employment contract to where if you do leave and you want to be, and the company wants to keep you out of competitors' hands, then they pay for, some amount of time that you work out where you're neither here nor there.
That's an interesting strategy. That's an interesting strategy in the sense, in light of what we've talked about. Are teams investing in 2025, or are they coasting almost literally to 2026 in the new regulations? That's an interesting strategy when you presume that Aston Martin brought Adrian Newey on for 2026 and beyond, primarily, right? So you've stopped him from helping get Aston Martin a leg up this year. But that's ultimately not really why Aston Martin.
And I even saw, like, as it pertains to the wormhole, the rabbit hole, whatever you want to call it, that I went down with this recent discovery, because I was just like, wait a minute, it's his first day. I can't, I thought he was already, where did I see that? Whatever.
You just thought you missed it under Hamilton's first day.
Well, apparently Aston has 2 separate development teams. They have the 2025 car development and the 2026 car development. And those I'm sure there's some overlap. But the quote in the article I was reading was basically saying like, hey, typically like human nature is to worry about things that are right in front of you, things that are happening soonest, right? So if you're the same team is working on the 2025 car and the 2026 car, more of their effort, more of their bandwidth is going to be dedicated to the 2025 car, and we're basically going to leave 2026 on the back burner. So we have two separate teams, two separate car development teams.
Right.
So that it sort of started to make sense. Like, and to your point, he's coming on probably as soon as he could, as soon as he was legally allowed to, per contract or garden leave or whatever. But yeah, I think this was kind of my assumption to begin with anyway. 2026 is when we'll really see those effects from Adrian Newey's contribution to Aston Martin.
I think you called that out, yeah, that it would be more 2026. And that makes sense given that he has very little input if he just started on Monday. Interesting. It reminds me a little bit of like NASA missions, right? Are you on Apollo 15, 16, right? If you're on one, you're not focused on the old one. You're completely focused on yours. It also reminds me of any of us who have day jobs where people will keep asking you to work on the thing you're doing, even though you're trying to move to the next big item, right? And there's an endless kind of tale of things you could fix or parts you could make for 2025, but at what sacrifice for 2026? Interesting. No, I was not familiar with gardening leave. That was a new term for me. It sounded more like something for the Brits out there. Maybe it is something that you would do at the end of your career.
Yeah.
Like that it would be almost like a semi-retirement.
Yeah, that's exactly. So that was my assumption when I first heard the term. I was just like, okay, he's in the twilight of his career. He's going to go home and piddle around.
Right.
Yeah, but no. So there's an actual. It's an actual thing.
Or the kind of thing you would get put on, kind of what do they call it? Suspended with pay or suspended in the garden. You can't do real work. Okay, quick reaction from you. In lieu of everything we've talked about, and even with the hype aside or included, is 2025 actually going to be a closer year than 2024?
Yes.
Okay.
I think that,
and by closer,
I think that testing has kind of shown what I was hoping, or what I was assuming, that the momentum that all the teams had at the end of the year would continue in similar fashion. Momentum being, and directionally good for Mercedes, McLaren, Ferrari. Directionally not so good for Red Bull. Not saying Red Bull doesn't have the chops to come back. They absolutely do. But to me, testing kind of showed, okay, it's going to be a continuation. And to your point about the gap closing, the gap was 8 seconds top to bottom last year. Red Bull had won 31 of the last 33 races leading up to testing. And Red Bull still dominated the first several races of the year, right? And that, to a great degree, determined at least the drivers' championship outcome. So this year, if the momentum continues, which I think, again, testing proves, momentum continues from the end of 2024, I think that spread to getting tighter just means that the competition is even more. You got Williams making big strides if their performance at testing can be extrapolated to what the outcomes are going to be this season. So maybe there's a top 5 teams kind of potentially on the podium every single race versus the top 2 or top 3 every single race.
Okay. I mean, that's exciting. When you talk about things that are exciting to think about, I think we talked about Verstappen potentially changing teams. It's an exciting prospect. Hamilton changing teams, big deal. We had 7 winners last year. If we had more than that, and if you look at the winners, like you said, Max Verstappen sort of dominated the first half of the season. But if you look at the last half of the season, it would be if you just took the last 10 races, the championship would have been between Lando Norris, Oscar Piastri, and maybe Charles Leclerc, right? Maybe even a Mercedes driver in there. Those would have been the top drivers fighting it out. So
it's funny exciting. when you read about long ago seasons, or you read about long ago drivers, they win like 4 or 5 races the whole year, which there were fewer races in the year back then, right? But if you just think about like
Right.
the single digit number of races that you win, and of course there's other point scoring places that you can finish in, but like to think about a world champion driver to only have won that many races out of the whole season, you think like, okay, it must have been a really fun season to watch where there's that much competition and maybe the cars and the drivers vary that much performance wise across different tracks and different situations, which I think we have more of that today with the huge calendar that we have with the truly international, truly global footprint that the season has, where you're in hot, humid Singapore, but then you're in hot, dry, Bahrain, Abu Dhabi, whatever, and then everything in between. I think that we're kind of back to where we should be for the sport, where 7 winners in a year, great, but like out of 24 races now, 23 races that we have, like still not a great spread. Like I'd like to see more. If the top 5 teams are competitive, and that means there could be 10 winners in a season. So
yeah, agreed. And I think there's some debate over that around preseason testing. I know there's different opinions on that, but one element to taking out preseason testing or taking out some of it, is you don't get those long drives. You got to show up with a car that can perform and the engine doesn't break down. The downside of that is with more preseason testing, it seems like we're tightening up that gap, and you get cars that are more competitive. So, cool.
All right, next quick reaction for you, Rube. Is the return of Angela Cullen, and this is Hamilton's personal trainer. If you watched Formula One up until 2023, she was the like bleach blonde. It's not really bleach blonde, like more like bleach silver, middle-aged lady who is like waiting on Hamilton hand and foot, always there, towel, food, bag, walking the dog, running behind him on the scooter, etc. She was there during his kind of last dominant years of Mercedes. She went away. I don't really know why. I did a little bit of research there. Don't know. Sorry, this is a long question. This is an explanation to the question, but she's back. She's back. There was a little bit of rumor that she was coming back. She's obviously, everyone knows now since Hamilton had his kind of track days at Ferrari. Obviously, she's present in testing. Quick reaction to you, Ruben. Does she indicate another dominant year from Hamilton?
Oh, I thought you were going to ask why she went away. I was like, I don't know.
If anybody knows,
does she indicate another dominant year?
Even if it's just speculative.
That's right. I mean, I do. The Critical Lap research team is fairly skilled. I think your question was, does her return indicate another dominant year from Hamilton?
Well, maybe not dominant, maybe just high performing.
No.
Right? Really consistent.
High performing year. Correlation versus causation. I think he's going to have a high performing year. I don't think she's coming back because there are indications of that. He made a comment. This is my opinion. This is the op-ed here of the Critical Lap. He made a comment that she was always really positive, that he never heard a negative word from her, and that she was always this like very positive, encouraging trainer, which obviously has got to be really important for these guys. They're so highly strung and on race weekends and whatnot. So this is my opinion. I wonder if there were some dark moments over the last couple of years with Mercedes underperforming, Hamilton questioning whether he still should be in the sport, a lot of that spark and energy gone. And if there was a point where Angela kind of said, I don't know if this is I don't know if you're going to be here much longer. I'm not sure if this is a great situation for me to be in. There may have been just a parting of the ways for that reason. And maybe now it makes sense for her to come back, because Hamilton does seem pretty bubbly right now. He's pretty cheerful. He seems like he's having more fun than I've seen him have in a long time.
That's a really great comparison there, or explanation. I hadn't thought of it that way, and that does seem a lot more likely as far as the reason that they parted ways. I hadn't thought of that, and I hadn't heard that from Hamilton.
I mean, it's all opinion.
Well, it's my opinion now. So
that
because I agree. I agree.
Nice. I'm glad I convinced you. I just think these trainers can be paid quite a bit to go anywhere, right? And presumably she's in high demand. If your driver's in a bad mood constantly and it's frustrating and it looks like they're about to end their career, you probably have your own career to think about. So maybe a good time to come back. All right, last one for you then. And this one is on the tail end of our last conversation. If it's a close season and the gaps are getting smaller and the lower end teams are fighting their way into the points, why are we changing regs? Should we have another year on the current regulations rather than changing it all
That's really
up?
interesting. What if there could be like an audible from the, or maybe like a trump card that Formula One could play and say, you know what? We're going to exercise the option for one more year of this car. That is a really interesting concept. Can we just continue? Like, if we like the trend of the teams are finally getting their feet under them and they're all competing, and it's better for the viewership to see, aggressive cars or, very strong cars all the way down the grid. Oh, that blows my mind. Yeah. So, yes. Is the question, should we do that? Yes, absolutely. Is the question, is it possible? I don't know. The FIA seems to rule with a bit of an iron fist or an iron filter.
I mean, to your point too, there's an entire team of engineers at Aston Martin that's about to get let go. Hey guys, never mind 2026. Red Bull's like, no, come on. Well, the reason I asked was, if you think about games, if you've ever like organized a game with a group of friends or maybe a group of like younger people, kids, and you've got 4 people on one side and 4 people on the other, and one team is just dominating over and over, you change it up. Like, okay, guys, let's mix that up a little bit. Let's get 2 of you guys over here and switch it. You don't change it up if it's a well-balanced, if you have well-balanced teams. That's what you're shooting for. So it just seems like they should be able to call an audible and say, our entire goal is to see converging lap times and a shrinking gap. If that gap is increasing, right? If we have Red Bull do 22 wins or 23 wins in a season and they do it again, okay, time's up. We're going to change the regulations.
So I think it would be interesting to have both, right? Like, one, you can extend regulations for a year because of the trend that you like, or 2, you can advance a year and change regulations sooner. I think that second option, that other side of it, would be super chaotic for all the teams involved. But I do think that it would sort of equalize the advantage that the works teams have, or the actual, major car company backed constructors have, right? So anybody that's not the main power unit recipient of Mercedes, Ferrari, Honda, etc., right?
Yep.
That helps those teams and it takes away that advantage. I think that advantage wasn't really there before the modern age of Formula One. I think it was all just moxie, it was just ingenuity and how good's the driver.
Right. And can your engine make it to the end of all the races? Exactly. It probably can.
Right.
Well, and I like the idea of there is a penalty. Again, I'm a new fan. I get it. For those of you who love Max Verstappen, you just want to see his car do well and set all the records. Same for Hamilton. But I like the idea of saying there's a penalty to be paid for dominating 2 seasons in a row. If you are that good, at some point, we're going to say, time's up. You can't just keep using the same one and being that dominant. We're going to change it up so that we reset the clock a little bit. And that's entirely up to you. Right? If you enter the 2025 season with 2 dominant seasons under your belt, you could expect the FIA to say, rule change next year. This is your last year to kind of make it count. But
I like that. Great concept. Great concept, Ruben. Again, hard hitting ideas coming from the Critical Lap research team.
Yep. And it's down to all of you, the listener, to throw in your votes. Send them in. email us. Let us know your thoughts. We are coming to the end of another episode, so thank you for joining us on the Critical Lap. Please do add comments and feedback. We love hearing those. Subscribe, join us on any of our various channels, wherever podcasts are found.
Hey, Ruben, last thing I've got for you here. You haven't said anything about my hat. Last episode I reviewed, we had very differing opinions on the liveries. I thought the worst one was Alpine. So today I'm trying to make up for it a little bit. Hope you enjoyed the seeing the pink and the blue.
I like the Alpine. So this whole time I just been thinking, man, what a great hat. Good. Do you have a Ferrari one?
Not yet.
That's probably for the best.
If I got a Ferrari one, would it be yellow? Would it be white? Would it be red?
I think it white and blue. I think
those good for that good Ferrari white and good Ferrari blue. All right. Well.
Yep. Just a little HP here and there. Well, thanks again to our engineer on the pit wall, Chris P, the legendary producer. And thanks to all of you for listening. Please join us next time. We'll be getting ready for the Australian Grand Prix. First race of the season. Yep. See you next time.